6 years ago, I used to think like this. I'm the happiest man in the world, I believed. Catherine and I met in a college. I confessed my feelings to her, and we started dating. Together, we went on diner-hopping adventures, watched our favorite movies, took drives, and spent quality time together. After dating for a while, we moved in together, and once we both secured jobs and got settled in, I proposed her and we got married. Every day was blissful after we became a married couple. Whenever Catherine answered the phone at home, she'd say, "Hello, this is Thompson," with a slightly shy expression. I adored watching her in those moments. For our first wedding anniversary, we decided to make it a memorable one and plan a spa getaway. I took the afternoon off to buy Catherine a surprise gift and stopped by a jewelry store. Just as I stepped outside after making the purchase, my cell phone inside my bag rang. "Is this Mr. Robert Thompson's?" It was the police on the other end. At that moment, I felt my blood drain from my face. Could Catherine have gotten involved in some kind of incident? That crossed my mind. The officer on the other end calmly began to explain. "There was a fire in a building full of restaurants downtown, and your wife was in a meeting in the shop next to where the fire started. Cardboard boxes in the hallway caught fire quickly. The flames didn't reach the store Catherine was in, but it quickly filled with thick smoke. She lost consciousness and was rushed to the ER," the officer explained. I understand. I'll be there right away." I felt disoriented and panicked, but I managed to hail a cab and rush to the hospital where Catherine was taken. The 30-minute ride to the hospital felt like hours. My heart raced. Please let her be okay. But my prayers went unanswered. When I arrived at the hospital, Catherine was already covered with a white sheet. The doctor tried to explain, but I couldn't absorb any of it. I sank to the ground, my mind a blank. After 1 week after funeral, I returned to work, just getting through each day. That was all I could manage. Colleagues tried to cheer me up by inviting me out, but I had no interest. I couldn't accept the reality. Then, after marking the 5th anniversary of her passing, something unexpected happened one day. The administrative assistant in my department, named Amy, went on maternity and parental leave. For the 6 months that Amy was away, we contracted with an agency to bring in a temporary assistant. On the following Monday, during the morning briefing, the temp, named Jessica, was introduced. "I'll be here for the next 6 months. Looking forward to working with you," she said, bowing slightly. My boss gestured towards me and said, "Robert, could you?" He then explained to Jessica, "Follow Robert for a while to learn the ropes." I couldn't help but stare at Jessica. I felt my heart pounding. I managed to maintain my composure and said, "I'm Robert. Nice to meet you," but I probably stared at her too intensely. She looked so much like Catherine. So identical that I wondered if she was Catherine reincarnated. This is gonna be tough, mentoring her. "Jessica, how good are you with computers?" I asked. She smiled briefly and said, looking me straight in the eyes, "I have a basic understanding of everything." I remember Catherine always smiled first before answering confidently. In the evening, when I happened to glance at her entering data, our eyes met. As I hastily tried to look away, she quickly stood up and came rushing over to me. With a cheerful smile, she offered me a candy, saying, "Here you go, Robert. When you're tired, take some glucose." I recalled Catherine giving me the same advice when I brought work home. And then, I realized I was searching for Catherine in her. I always thought Robert was approachable, but sometimes he looks so sad. Is it just my imagination? When I ask about work, he explains everything thoroughly, but he rarely talks about his family. What concerns me most is that I've never seen Robert laugh. He must have gone through something tough. But I shouldn't pry into someone's private life. Still, I couldn't help but wonder how hard it must be to live without a smile. Then, a month later, I came in bitterly to finish the presentation material for the joint meeting among 3 companies scheduled for the next day. I noticed a commotion in the department. "What's going on, boss?" When I asked, I discovered a shocking situation. A late-night lightning strike yesterday caused problems with most of the company's computers. My own computer was damaged too. It wouldn't even power on. The presentation material was strictly confidential, so I couldn't back it up to external drives like USBs. "Man, this is tough, but we have to get this done today, right?" To the visibly flustered boss I said, "Do we have any computers available right now? I'll do whatever it takes to redo the work." With that, I braced myself for what was ahead. A bit before starting time, Jessica came in, so I decided to get her help with data collection. Before we knew it, it was already 6 p.m., the end of the workday. "I'll take care of the rest," I told Jessica. But she smiled and replied, "No, I'll stay too. There's still work I can do, right?" "No, Jessica, I don't think we'll finish until after midnight. If you stay any longer, it would be a breach of your contract with your staffing agency." Upon hearing this, she murmured, "Oh, right," and after saying, "All right then, I'll be going," she clocked out and left. However, to my surprise, she returned an hour later. "Why are you? Didn't you go home?" Stunned me was met with a smile from Jessica, who said, "It'll be faster if we both do it." "Oh, consider this as volunteering, so it's outside of the contract," and she cheekily stuck her tongue out. "But first, let's eat. You know what they say, an army marches on its stomach," she said, laying out sandwiches, salad, and soup on the desk. "Thank you, but after eating, you should really go. I don't want you to miss the last train." I tried to persuade her, but she was quite stubborn. Once she made up her mind, there was no changing it. Even in that, she was so much like her. Even then, I couldn't help but see my wife in her. "Robert, do we need a graph for this strength explanation?" "Well, we need a graph from an experiment conducted in Japan about metal strength. I'll look it up later," I said, thinking she could first extract the local data. Jessica then smiled and said, "No worries, I can do it. I understand Japanese." Her Japanese skills were impressive. She found international sites on metal experiments that I wasn't aware of and translated them swiftly. And by 4 a.m., we finally completed the material. Thanks to Jessica, I finished 3 hours earlier than I expected. She made 2 coffees and said, "I'm glad it's done," with a smile. Then suddenly, I decided to ask her something I'd been curious about for a long time. "Hey Jessica, this picture is of my wife. Do you happen to know her?" I showed her a photo of Catherine saved on my phone. For a moment, she looked shocked, but then her expression turned sad and teary-eyed as she said, "I know her very well." "So, you are Catherine's husband. Were you close friends with Catherine?" "It's our first time meeting, right?" As I asked, she began to slowly share her story. "Catherine and I are cousins and grew up together. We spent every day together until I graduated from middle school. But then, due to my father's job transfer, my whole family moved to England. We returned when he was transferred back to the main office 2 years ago. That's why I couldn't attend Catherine's wedding or funeral." Tears streamed down her face as she continued. "After returning to the US, I tried to visit the address from the wedding invitation, but they had already moved. I quickly apologized to her, feeling guilty. "I'm so sorry, Jessica. I didn't realize you tried to visit. Thank you so much." As I bowed my head, Jessica, who had been teary-eyed, suddenly chuckled. "Robert, you're exactly as Catherine described you." I became curious about how Catherine used to talk about me. According to her, whenever she talked with Catherine on the phone, I would always come up in their conversation. She always gushed about how I was the most sincere and kindest person in the world. She told me this with a nostalgic smile. Hearing this, I found myself smiling. "Ah, I've finally seen you smile. I was starting to think you never did." "It's reassuring." Her words caught me off guard. I realized that in the 5 years since Catherine passed, I haven't smiled at all. I probably made others around me uneasy. I haven't smiled at all since. I felt sorry to Jessica as well. Jessica, if you're free next Sunday, would you like to come over in memory of Catherine? Upon hearing this, she excitedly replied, I'll come. I'll definitely come. Maybe it was the excitement of staying up all night, but we ended up chatting for a while. Concerned about our presentation later that day, we soon left for the office. The joint presentation with the other 2 companies turned out to be a huge success. Jessica, having lived abroad, showcased her Japanese skills, collecting numerous data from Japan. Her translations were highly praised. Our manager was smiling throughout. Several days passed, and then came Sunday. As promised, she visited me in memorial for Catherine. She prayed for more than 20 minutes. I made some orange picote, which was Catherine's favorite. Upon tasting it, Jessica instantly recognized it and said, This is the orange pico Catherine and I loved, and smiled nostalgically before taking a sip. Then, with a serious look, she started talking while looking straight at me. Robert, in the month that I've worked with you, and until the night we prepared for the presentation, I haven't seen you smile. I understand that these past 5 years have been tough and heartbreaking, but maybe it's time to let go. Catherine would be the most worried seeing you without a smile. Yeah, her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I felt as though I had just woken up from a long slumber. I've lost my emotions, and I wonder what Catherine would think if she saw me like this. Being the warrior that Catherine was, she might still be concerned about me. Maybe she hasn't found peace in heaven yet. Seeing me deep in thought, she said, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have spoken out of turn, and lowered her head. No, you're right. I shouldn't keep Catherine worried forever. I probably worried you too this past month. I'm truly sorry. I apologized to her. She smiled and said, No, thank you for realizing, and thank you for letting me meet Catherine today. She has the same laugh, same way of talking, and even the same genuine kindness. I thought that perhaps it was Catherine who brought her to our company. After that, she often visited our home and brought beautiful flowers and delicious treats to place before Catherine's memorial. And I started going out with her for movies and meals. Lately, I've come to cherish her slightly dominant side and the way she accidentally speaks in Japanese when she gets mad. Today marks the anniversary of Catherine's passing. For 5 years, I visited Catherine's grave alone, but today, we both visited together. She meticulously and gently cleaned Catherine's gravestone. We placed flowers, a candle, incense, and Catherine's favorite, cheesecake, and paid our respects. Catherine, I think I've been a cause for concern since you passed. I'm sorry, but I have something to tell you today. I'm going to be happy with Jessica, and every year on this day, I'll come and tell you how we're doing, so you don't have to worry anymore. As I spoke in front of the grave, Jessica, teary-eyed yet smiling, spoke to the gravestone. Catherine, you know Robert's a bit unique, right? Wondering if I'd said something funny, Jessica said. Proposing in front of a grave, well, it's fine. Catherine's our witness, after all. We looked at each other and laughed. Then we both lined up, put our hands together, and said, We won't let you worry anymore, Catherine. I'll make sure we're happy. And I felt as though Catherine was smiling at the two of us.